So this presentation is going to cover the role and the powers and also the selection of jurors. So what I'd like you to do first of all is write down everything that you can think of regarding trial by jury, everything that you know from your past knowledge and your other learning, because I think you'll be surprised how much you already know. So here are a couple of quotes about the jury. Lord Devlin says that the jury is the lamp that shows that freedom lives. And Lord Elwyn Jones said, "No man is to be fined or imprisoned by the will of the state, but only by the judgment of his equals." From this we can see how much importance is attached to the jury by judges. It's important that completely unbiased, random members of the public are making decisions on guilt and innocence for some of the most serious criminal offences in the UK. So what I'd like you to do now is watch the video which is attached here, and I want you to summarise the points that it raises about the role of the jury. This is a video which is shown to all people who are on jury service. It's about 14 minutes long, and it is the only training and instruction that jurors actually get during their time on a jury. So these are the key points, and hopefully you will have picked up most of these from the video that you've just watched. So most importantly, it's a trial by equals. There are 12 individuals on each jury, and they come up with a verdict of guilty or not guilty. And if they want to give a guilty verdict, they must be sure beyond reasonable doubt. So they must be sure of the point. Juries decide on the facts of the cases, and initially they are invited to give a unanimous verdict. That means all 12 jurors must agree if they wish to convict. After at least 2 hours, but quite often much longer, the judge may allow for a majority verdict, where it might be 11-1 or 10-2, but no fewer than 10 jurors can decide that they want to convict. If there was 9 or fewer, then they wouldn't be able to convict. And if they could not come to a decision, they would have to give a retrial. The jury must be free from bias, which means that they have no particular opinions about anything to do with the trial. They mustn't have any opinions on the race, the gender, the sexuality of the defendant, or any important fact like that. And they must swear an oath in which they promise that they will give a true verdict based only on the evidence. During the actual trial, the jurors will look at all of the evidence, and they will sit in court throughout. The only time that they may ever be asked to leave the court is if a matter to do with the law is to be discussed, because the law has nothing to do with the jury really. They can pass notes to ask questions or make requests, so they might ask for the defendant or a witness to be asked a particular question, or they might pass a note for something quite practical because they need a break, for example. The jurors are encouraged to take notes, to keep track of the evidence, and all of these are destroyed once the trial is over. And at the end of the case, the judge explains the relevant law to the jury, but only the information that they need to make their decision. The jury then retire to a private room to discuss their verdict, and this must be done in secret. They mustn't consider anything from outside the courtroom. They're not allowed to do any research or speak to anybody who is outside of the jury about any matters to do with the case. And they must appoint a foreman who speaks in court to read out the verdict and usually chairs the debates when they're coming to their decision. So that was the role of the jury. Now let's have a look at who can sit on a jury. So this is under the Juries Act 1974, as amended by the Criminal Justice Act 2003. So qualifications for jury service. They must be aged between 18 and 70, on the electoral register, a resident of the UK, the Channel Islands or the Isle of Man for at least 5 years since the age of 13. Disqualifications. If they have any criminal convictions. Now this depends on what sort of criminal convictions and the level of sentence that they got. So if they're sentenced for imprisonment or youth custody for 5 years or more, they will be disqualified for life. If they receive a criminal sentence, for example, a community order in the last 10 years, then they are disqualified for 10 years. Anyone who's currently on bail is disqualified. Anyone with mental disorders or mental health problems, so if they're in hospital or receiving treatment, and this even includes going to the GP for mild depression. So if they have any physical disabilities, it may mean that they are not able to be on a jury. So for example, somebody who was deaf was not allowed to sit on a jury because they wouldn't be able to hear the evidence. Equally, somebody who's blind would not be able to see the evidence, which is also important. Some people, including judges, lawyers, police officers, ministers of religion, used to be ineligible, and others, doctors and MPs, used to be excused as of right. However, the Criminal Justice Act 2003 said that this was no longer the case. And in 2004, Lord Justice Dyson was called to do jury service. If police officers on a jury have worked with an officer giving evidence, then he should probably be excused, as justice must be seen to be done. And usually a police officer would not be able to do jury service in their local court. So, excusals or deferrals. This is something that students often get wrong, so this is really important that you pay full attention to this. So a deferral is at the discretion of the judge for up to 12 months. A deferral is when you put off your jury service up to 12 months. You can only do this once, and it must be for a good reason. So for example, if you're unwell, you've got urgent business, a family holiday, or some important appointment, which means that you wouldn't be able to do it. Complete excusals are very rare, as the court prefers to defer the service to put it off rather than to excuse somebody. And if you don't attend jury service, you can and will be fined up to £1,000. So part 2. Once the list of potential jurors is known, it's shown to the prosecution and the defence, where we have a look at who can sit on the jury once you've been summoned to court. So the selection process. Juries are selected at random by a computer at the Central Jury Summoning Bureau. Enough people are selected for 2 weeks, and in Birmingham that's around 150 people. Panels of over 12 jurors are drawn up, and then juries of 12 are selected at random for individual cases. The process is not always completely random. There was a jury in Romford where 2 jurors came from the same street. If not enough people turn up on the day, then people in the street can be asked to be on the jury, and this is known as praying the talisman, but it's very, very rare. We now need to have a look at vetting. So police checks, criminal record checks are carried out as a matter of routine, and this was confirmed and approved in the case of Aaron Mason. Wider checks on a juror's background and their political views may be checked, but only if it was a national security case, and this is only with the Attorney General's permission. So challenge takes place before the jury has actually been sworn in, and the prosecution and the defence have a right to challenge a particular juror, and if they're successfully challenged, this means that they won't sit on the jury. First of all, if we have a look at challenge for cause. With challenge for cause, you need to show a good reason why a juror shouldn't sit. So for example, if they know the defendant, or as seen in Aaron Wilson, the particular juror was a prison officer's wife. A whole array can also be challenged, which means that the entire jury can be challenged, but this is usually to say that the jury has not been chosen in a representative way. However, you can't use this to get a more multiracial jury, as seen in Aaron Ford. And the prosecution only have the right to ask a member of the jury to stand by. No reason needs to be given for this, and this is quite rare. So the questions that you should now be able to answer are: describe how jurors qualify and are selected for service in a criminal trial, and that's 10 marks, and also describe the role of jurors in the Crown Court.